Right, so after years in the military, the usual crawling through mud, nearly dying in places I can't pronounce, and perfecting the art of pretending instant coffee doesn't taste like burnt despair, I decided, in a moment of heroic delusion, to surprise the family for Thanksgiving. Yes, surprise, like some kind of emotionally damaged advent calendar. Thought I'd pop home unannounced, turn up on the doorstep all rugged and battle-worn, and get greeted like the prodigal son with open arms, mashed potatoes and at least one tearful, dramatic hug in the hallway. What I actually got? A confused silence. Dad squinting at me like he wasn't sure if I was his son or the gas man. Mom with that tight little smile. She reserves for neighbors she secretly despises, but still invites round for tea. And my sister muttering something about, "Oh, didn't realize you were still in the country." Thanks, Shannon. Great to be home. The house hadn't changed, by the way. Still smelled like Dettol and disappointment. Same faded wallpaper. Same dusty cabinet full of commemorative royal plates no one's allowed to touch. And the same passive-aggressive energy that clung to the walls like mold. The dog barked once, sniffed me, and then immediately went back to its bed like even he couldn't be arsed. But I soldiered on, because that's what I do apparently. Soldier on, stiff upper lip and all that bollocks. Sat down at the table like some background character in a sitcom that got written out in season 2, trying to pretend everything felt normal. It didn't. It was like trying to slot myself back into a jigsaw puzzle that had clearly moved on and replaced me with a picture of a caravan in Skegness. And here's the thing, I didn't even expect a parade. I'm not daft. I know we're British and affection terrifies us. But I thought maybe, I'd get a roasty and a lukewarm "we missed you" before they launched back into arguing about who left the immersion heater on. Instead, it was like I'd interrupted something. Which, spoiler alert, I had. But I didn't know that yet. So there I was, sat at the table like a guest at my own funeral, watching Mum pass the gravy to my brother like he'd just come back from war, and thinking, right, something's off. Something's properly off. But I said nothing. Because I was raised to be polite, emotionally repressed, and to never cause a scene unless absolutely necessary, or unless someone skips the queue at the chippy, obviously. And that, my dear listener, was just the starter. And I'm not being dramatic, all right? I am. But it genuinely felt like crossing into enemy territory. Like one wrong word and someone was going to launch a passive-aggressive missile in the form of a comment about my life choices. The front door creaked open like it was groaning in disappointment. Fitting, really. And there it was, the hallway. Same faded beige carpet. Same dusty coat rack with my dad's jacket that still smells like petrol and misplaced rage. And the same wallpaper from 1996 that looked like it had survived not just Y2K, but several failed DIY attempts and a particularly aggressive episode of changing rooms. Honestly, the entire place looked like it had been decorated by someone who lost a bet and won't let it go. Dad came into view first, holding a cup of tea like it might explode when he saw me. He did that classic British dad thing, blinked twice, exhaled through his nose, and looked vaguely like he'd seen a ghost. A disappointed ghost, one who still owes him 20 quid. "Morning," he muttered, even though it was 5:30, and then just stared like he was waiting for me to apologize for existing. Then Mum appeared, wiping her hands on a tea towel like she was in a bloody soap opera, and gave me that smile, the one you give to someone trying to sell. You broadband on your doorstep, tight controlled, borderline threatening. You know the one. "Hi, love, what a surprise." Emphasis on the word surprise. Like I'd walked in wearing a balaclava instead of a military uniform. Now, to be fair, I hadn't told them I was coming. Part of the surprise in it. Thought it'd be a lovely emotional moment. Dramatic homecoming. Tears in the kitchen, a roast dinner, maybe even a spontaneous hug if we were feeling reckless. Instead, I got blinking and awkward tea-making noises. No banners, no "we missed you" sign, not even a half-arsed "how was the war." Just an atmosphere so thick with tension, you could have sliced it and served it with a side of passive resentment. Even the dog looked confused. He sort of wandered over, sniffed my boots, and then gave me a look like, "Mate, you left. You don't belong to this circus anymore." Then he went and lay back down under the radiator like the emotionally stable creature. As I stood there, rucksack on my back, trying not to notice that my childhood photos had been replaced with my sister's uni graduation and a bloody, framed picture of the cat. Honestly, I half expected to see a shrine to my younger brother next to the fireplace. Wouldn't have surprised me. And yet, like an idiot, I kept smiling. Because that's what we do, right? We show up unannounced, get emotionally gut-punched by a lukewarm reception, and still pretend it's all fine because God forbid we talk about anything. Still, I told myself they're just shocked. Give it time. Let the kettle boil and maybe, just maybe, someone will remember I exist outside of Facebook memories. Spoiler, they didn't. But hey, at least the tea was lukewarm. Just like the welcome. So dinner. We all sat around the table like one of those awkward family scenes in a Channel 4 drama, except with less warmth and more clinking cutlery to fill the silence. Mom had made her usual dry chicken flavorless peas and a Yorkshire pudding that looked like it was having an identity crisis. The kind of meal that screams I cooked because I had to, not because I love you. Comfort food, but make it emotionally unavailable. I tried to ease in, make some polite chat like, how's things been? As if I hadn't just risen from the dead and walked in through the front door like some forgotten subplot. No one asked me a single question. Not even did you die, which frankly feels like bare minimum small talk. When someone's been in a literal war zone, anyway halfway through the meal, just as I was trying to cut through a roast potato that fought back, Mom leans over to my sister all conspiratorial like she's narrating a Jane Austen novel in her head and says, well, once the will goes through, the house will be yours and your brother's anyway. And I just paused, fork midair, brain buffering. I looked up like, I'm sorry, the what now? The will goes through. As in, they've got a will and not just a will. A finalized, signed, sealed, sorted who gets what when they pop it will. And the real kicker, it's not me. Not a mention, not a nod. Not even a he can have the kettle. Apparently the son who's been dodging IEDs for 5 years gets a heartfelt thanks for your service and a plate of peas that taste like regret. My sister didn't even flinch. Just nodded like she'd known for ages, and my younger brother, bless him, professional layabout and walking vape cloud, didn't even look up from his phone, probably too busy Googling how inheritance tax works. I sat there like an extra at a dinner party. I wasn't invited to realizing in real time that my parents had written me out of the estate like I was a bad season of EastEnders. And the best part, no one even noticed my face go white. Because why would they? I'm just the spare, the stand-in. The one who went off to fight for Queen and country while they were fighting over the last biscuit. Honestly, I half expected Mom to turn to me and say, oh sorry love, didn't think you'd be back in time to need a roof. I mean, let's not pretend we're surprised. She once regifted me a Lynx Africa set. I left it home 5 years ago and acted like it was thoughtful. The rest of dinner was a blur. I chewed mechanically, staring at my plate, trying not to make a scene. Because heaven forbid I ruin the ambience of their legally binding betrayal with my feelings. And you know that moment where you realize no matter what you do, what you sacrifice, where you've been, who you've become, you will always be the afterthought in someone else's legacy. Yeah, that. So I finished my meal, thanked them, because I'm still British even while being emotionally evicted, and helped clear the table like a good little ghost, in the background of their perfect heirloom handover. Honestly, should have stayed in Kabul. At least there the betrayal isn't served with a side of Aunt Bessie's. So yeah, turns out I hadn't been cut out of the will. Oh no. That would imply I was ever included to begin with, which, in hindsight, was wildly optimistic on my part. I wasn't written out. I just didn't exist. Like a bad first date or that one time Mom forgot I was allergic to shellfish. Apparently the grand plan, the dynastic vision, if you will, was to leave everything to the other two. The house, which, let's be honest, is basically a glorified radiator with a roof. The Nissan Micra with the broken passenger window. And the antique tea set no one's allowed to touch, but everyone's emotionally terrified of. You know the one. It lives in the cabinet with the good intentions and unspoken resentment. My younger siblings? The chosen ones. One works part-time at a vape shop and still thinks gravy granules count as a cooking skill. The other once got a detention for submitting ChatGPT lyrics as original poetry and still uses the phrase adulting unironically. These are the heirs. Meanwhile, I've spent years abroad in uniform, dealing with things that make EastEnders look like a CBBC show, and apparently, my reward is the moral high ground and a fridge magnet from the Falklands. Who needs property when you've got trauma and a good handshake? I asked tentatively. So, just to check, what's the thinking behind all this? Mum blinked, sipped her tea like it was a lie suppressant, and said, well, you've always been so independent, love. Ah yes, the old You're fine without us routine. Translation. We assumed you'd either die heroically or move so far away. We could pretend you didn't exist when it came to legal paperwork. And look, it's not about the money. All right, it's partly about the money, but it's more about what it means. They sat down, as a family, probably over a glass of supermarket, bread and a biscuit that tastes like guilt, and decided, together, that I was surplus to requirements. Too competent, too distant, too inconvenient. Apparently my inheritance is knowing they're proud of me, which is ironic because they've never actually said it out loud. It's like being awarded an invisible trophy. Thanks, Mom. Can't wait to cash in that emotional check at the co-op. And the worst part? No one thought this would be a big deal. Like I wouldn't notice. Like I'd just pop in for a roast. Here I've been legally erased from my own family's endgame. And go righto. Cheers for the beans on toast, I'll be off then. Which, incidentally, is exactly what I did. Because I'm British and emotionally stunted and trained to leave before I cry. So yeah, they gave the keys to the kingdom to the ones who still need help doing a tax return and think insurance is a scam. And me, I got nothing. Not even the tea set. Not even the bloody biscuit tin. Just the knowledge that, in the eyes of my family, I'm the dependable backup plan, the emotional equivalent of a spare charger in a drawer full of old receipts. Cheers, Mum. Can't wait to visit again. Next time I'll bring a will of my own, and it'll just say delete family. I left. No dramatic exit, no shouting match, no overturned Yorkshire puddings or, how dare you, monologue while clutching a glass of Echo Falls, just stood up, buttoned my coat like I was in a 2007 BBC crime drama, and walked out. Silent, stoic, deeply traumatized and but polite about it, and that, my friends, is what we call emotional maturity, or suppression. Same difference. I didn't even say goodbye. Not because I was trying to make a point, but because if I opened my mouth, I'd either cry or say something deeply unhinged. Like cheers for the betrayal and pass the stuffing. Neither of which felt like a win, really. So I left them there, sat around the table, carving up what was left of the lamb and the last shreds of my childhood dignity, and I walked out. No shoes thrown. No chairs kicked. Just me, my coat, and a sense of betrayal so heavy it needed its own seat on the bus. Speaking of which, yes, I got the bus home, because nothing quite rounds off being disinherited like sitting next to a man eating a Tesco meal. Deal with his mouth open while you silently have a breakdown. And don't worry, I didn't cry. I refused to cry. Instead, I stared out the window like a haunted Victorian widow, blinking furiously and pretending. I was in a low-budget indie film called Family is a Social Construct. A woman got on with a pram and gave me the "Are you all right, love?" Look, you know the one, half concern.
Half please don't cry in public.
I've already had a long day. And I smiled back with that expression that says, yes, I'm fine. I just found out my entire family would rather leave the dog their house than me. But here's the bit that really kicks you in the existential. Shin, I wasn't even surprised. Hurt, yes. Gutted, obviously. But surprised? Not really. Because deep down there's always been that undercurrent. That vibe that you're tolerated, not cherished. Like a spare tin of beans in the back of the cupboard. Useful in emergencies, otherwise forgotten. So yeah, I left. No fireworks, no closure. Just cold roasties in my stomach. And a new fun flavor of emotional abandonment to stew in on the way back. And do you know what's mad? They didn't even text. Not a "where are you?" Or "come back, we'll sort it." Just radio silence, as if I'd popped out to the shop for milk and never came back. Honestly, if I had flipped the table, at least there'd have been a story. Instead, all I've got is the image of my mum dishing out trifle while I silently walked out of her life like a background extra who forgot their cue. So yes, I did what emotionally repressed British people have done for centuries. I swallowed the pain, walked away like a misunderstood protagonist, and didn't cause a scene. Because in this family, we don't talk about things. We just weaponize politeness until someone quietly implodes. Not a peep. No texts, no calls. Not even a rogue ex sent by accident. Just complete radio silence from the house of passive aggression. And I must say, absolutely sensational. You'd think after walking out of a family dinner like I was starring in Call the Midwife, the emotional breakdown years, someone, anyone, might have checked in. But nope, nada. Apparently, my sudden disappearance was as emotionally impactful as losing a sock in the wash. Slightly inconvenient, quickly forgotten. At first I thought maybe they were giving me space. But then I remembered. This is the same family that once rang me 4 times because I didn't reply to a group chat about whether to have lamb or beef for Sunday roast. So yeah, space wasn't the vibe. More like, we'll just pretend that uncomfortable emotional moment didn't happen and hope it dies quietly in the garden with the gnome we never mention. And honestly, it was lovely. No guilt trips. No awkward just checking in messages. No random forwarded Facebook memes from mom that somehow always include a minion and the words family is everything. Just silence. Pure, undisturbed silence. It was the emotional equivalent of canceling plans and putting your phone on do not disturb while wearing a dressing gown that smells like comfort and lost ambition. And look, I know what you're thinking. Surely the silence made you feel abandoned. Yes, but in a peaceful way. It's a special kind of healing when you realize the people who raised you can ignore you with the same energy they used to deny you. A McFlurry because there's ice cream at home. Like, yes, the betrayal is mutual now. Very balanced, very zen. I even started calling it my grief sabbatical. Except instead of traveling or journaling, I just sat in my flat, binged Gogglebox reruns, and had long, silent debates with myself about whether I was the family disappointment or just the scapegoat with a military pension. Spoiler, both. And can we talk about how freeing it is to realize that ignoring people is free therapy? I mean, sure, you could pay $70 an hour to talk to someone named Rachel with a calming voice and a certificate on the wall. Or you could block your mom on WhatsApp and suddenly breathe again. I started sleeping better, eating better, laughing at things that weren't just my own trauma. My blood pressure dropped. My skin cleared. I practically achieved inner peace. Until, of course, the text came through. But we'll get to that, don't you worry. For now, just know this. If silence is golden, then my family gave me the crown jewels. So after a blissful month of pure, uninterrupted silence, like the emotional version of a spa retreat, I get a text. Not a phone call. Not even a voice note where she pretends not to cry but accidentally sniffles mid-sentence. Just a text. Plain. Clinical. Delivered with all the warmth of a parking fine. I love the mortgage is due. Could you help us out this month? No, hope you're doing all right. No, sorry we emotionally body slammed you at the dinner table. Not even a cheeky gex to soften the existential slap. Just straight to business. Like I'm the bloody Halifax. I sat there staring at my phone like it had personally insulted my intelligence. Because let's just get one thing straight. You cut me out of your will. You erased me from the family legacy like I was a bad tattoo after a midlife crisis. And now you want me to pay your mortgage? What am I, the ghost of Christmas direct debit? I mean, it takes a certain level of unbothered audacity to text your estranged child, the one you didn't even mention in your little inheritance party, and ask for financial support like it's a group chat for a hen do in Ibiza. Part of me honestly respected it. Like, wow, the brass neck, the sheer cheek. If she'd asked for a kidney, I think I'd have laughed less. And let's talk about timing, shall we? She waited a month. A whole 4 weeks of glorious radio silence. Long enough for me to almost convince myself that I was over it. That maybe, just maybe, I was healing. Then bam, text message jump scare. Like a horror film, but instead of a demon in the mirror, it's your mom asking for a tenner and your dignity. My first thought? Maybe she sent it to the wrong child. Surely she meant the heir. You know, the chosen ones. The chosen two. The microwave pasta enthusiasts. But no, it was for me. Full name and everything. She'd made sure. She wanted me. Not my presence, not my love, not a conversation. Just my bank details. It's funny, isn't it? How quickly you're not in the will becomes, can you cover the bills? Like I'm some kind of tragic family GoFundMe campaign they dip into when the boiler breaks or someone's Netflix runs out. Honestly, I didn't even get angry. I think I'd emotionally short-circuited by that point. I just stared at it. The way you stare at the last biscuit in the tin and realize it's actually a coaster. Part of me wanted to reply with something scathing. A proper monologue. The sort of reply that gets you blocked, but wins you the imaginary courtroom battle in your head. But instead I just smiled. Because I knew exactly what to say. And no, I'm not proud of it. But I don't regret it either. Now don't get me wrong, I was tempted. Oh, I was so tempted to write a full-on Shakespearean monologue. Dramatic pauses and everything. You know, really lean into the trauma. How darest thou summon coin from the exile? when thou hast anointed thine favorites with all ye worldly possessions and an antique sodding tea set? But in the end, I didn't need it. Because sometimes the most savage thing you can say is almost nothing at all. No rant, no emotional detonation, no typing bubbles for 5 minutes followed by a deleted message. Just one reply, 3 little words. Ask the air. That's it. That's the tweet. Minimal effort. Maximum chaos. I sent it, locked my phone, and went about my evening like I just dropped a mic and walked off stage at the O2. Honestly, I haven't felt power like that since I told a Year 9 supply teacher they'd spelt conscientious wrong. It was that kind of righteous energy. Petty, yes, but also poetic. And let's be clear, this wasn't just a clapback. This was an entire vibe, a full-blown spiritual experience, a Michelin-starred serving of emotional closure, plated up with a side of passive aggression and a tiny mint leaf of self-worth on top. Because you can't really argue with it, can you? Ask the air. Translation, you picked your favorites. Now pick your pockets. I mean, they wanted to divvy up the spoils like I was already dead. They made their little Game of Thrones seating plan, which gave the castle and the spoons to the kids who still think adulthood means paying for Netflix. And I was what? The grizzled, exiled sibling with a tragic backstory and no screen time? Well, congrats, now I'm also the one not paying your bloody mortgage. It's funny how people suddenly remember you exist when the bills come in. Like some kind of emotional tap. Ignored when things are fine. Turned on the minute it's inconvenient. But not this time. This time I didn't show up. Didn't send money. Didn't even hit them with a sad emoji. Just fired off that text like a smoke bomb and vanished. Honestly, should be on a t-shirt. Or my gravestone. Here lies the eldest. Underappreciated, underfunded, and over it. I half expected a follow-up message. Maybe even a guilt-drenched voice note where Mum pretends the cat misses me. Or tells me my sister cried watching Call the Midwife and thought of me. But nope, nothing. Which honestly, chef's kiss. Silence is free. And for once it was mine. Of course she did. No reply, no how could you speak to me like that? No dramatic chain text with poorly punctuated guilt and a passive-aggressive Bible verse at the end. Just read at 1804. And then nothing. Honestly, I stared at the screen like I was waiting for the second coming of a typing bubble. But nope, nada. Just the eerie silence of someone who thought they'd win a game they didn't. Realize I'd already rage quit. I imagine her holding the phone like it personally betrayed her. As if my text was the real villain here, not, the whole erasing your firstborn from existence, and then asking them to pay your gas bill bit. And me? I was in my flat dressing gown on, emotionally scarred but moisturized, sipping a builder's brew like I was the bloody queen of healthy boundaries. One pinky up, one eyebrow raised, and not a single ounce of regret. That silence? Bliss. Like being wrapped in a weighted blanket made of petty satisfaction and quiet revenge. I could taste the discomfort on her end through the screen. That good old-fashioned British tension, silent, seething and entirely unacknowledged. It's wild, isn't it? They'll ignore you for years, then expect you to snap back into loyal eldest sibling mode the minute money's mentioned. And the second you draw a line in the sand, oh, suddenly you're the problem. Like I hadn't been emotionally ghosted since 2007. There's something so poetic about it, though. The silence. The lack of drama. Just one clean-cut emotional boundary wrapped in digital read receipts. It was almost spiritual, like a middle-class retreat in the Cotswolds. But instead of yoga and scented candles, it was just me, my tea, and the smug satisfaction of knowing I didn't cave. I didn't plead. Didn't fold. Didn't even send a follow-up message saying sorry. That was harsh, which, let's be honest, is the unofficial British anthem. I just left it, and for once I didn't feel guilty. Didn't spiral. Didn't sit there wondering if I was the villain in someone else's memory. Because this time I knew. I was the villain. Their villain. And you know what? It suited me. If that makes me cold, so be it. I'd rather be emotionally distant than emotionally bankrupt and still footing the council tax for a house. I wasn't even allowed to haunt in the will. So yeah, she left me on red. But I left with peace, pride, and half a packet of chocolate hobnobs. And between us, that's the best inheritance I've had so far. So here's what the saga taught me. Because apparently life's a council house. And sometimes it just slams the door in your face when you least expect it. You can sacrifice everything. Yes, everything. The late-night cups of tea, the countless rides to Tesco, pretending to laugh at Dad's jokes for the 100th time, without rolling your eyes, and even resisting the urge to throttle your sibling, who still microwaves their chips on top of the gravy. You do all that, and what do you get in return? A polite round of applause, followed by being completely erased from the will because you dared to move out and get a life. Lovely, isn't it? Like being clapped for running the three-legged race in the school sports day and then told you can't even have a go on the bouncy castle. Honestly, it's the kind of emotional slap that comes with a side of undercooked chips and that awkward mum-sister passive-aggressive chat about family unity over a cuppa that tastes suspiciously like cold regret. And the Christmas invites? Well, unless they suddenly decide to rewrite the will, rename the house after me, or send me a fruitcake as a peace offering, which, frankly, might be the most sincere thing they ever do, I'll be staying exactly where I am, safely outside the revolving door of family drama, sipping something stronger than tea and probably binge-watching something bleak on the telly. Because here's the real kicker: sometimes the people who should be your ride or die end up being the ones who don't even bother to wave goodbye as you disappear into the night like a tragic BBC drama character. So no, I won't be going back for Christmas. Not unless there's a dramatic last-minute will rewrite, a surprise heartfelt apology, or at the very least, a promise of a decent roast without the usual silent treatment for dessert. In the meantime, I'm left with the finest inheritance of all: the ability to laugh at how utterly mad this whole thing is, the wisdom to know when to walk away, and the sheer, unshakable relief of knowing I'm not the problem in this particular farce. Cheers to that.